Soundboard right here. To turn on the soundboard, it's, again, we have a universal power switch. It's this guy right here. You turn that on, and then you're going to see what happens is the power in the, what's called the equalizer, which is right here, is going to come on. It's going to give you power to our CD player, which is right here. And then these four things, which you're really never going to have to worry about, are our wireless mic, our headset. We use those for the musical. So they're there if you ever want to do a song and dance number. You're welcome.
Excellent.
And it's going to turn on the soundboard. It's going to make this annoying sound at first, and that's the fan turning on. It's going to turn on the system. It takes a little while for it to warm up. It's got two sides to it. The left-hand side, you're going to see that there are, turn on some more lights. And there's also these light switches if you wanted. We use them for productions just to have a little bit more light. They're all blue so that it doesn't create a lot of light, but it does help sometimes. So it has two sides to it. The left-hand side, you're going to see that there are numbers at the bottom of every slider, 1 through 16. Those numbers correspond to the plugins on the stage. So 1 and 2 on this side are these two sliders. 3 and 4, which are underneath the stairs, are right here. 5 and 6 are right here. So we plugged ours into 5, so we're going to be working with channel 5. And everything that's associated with channel 5 is going to run all the way up this row right here. I'm going to walk you through what each of them do so you have an understanding. You really are going to need to work with 3 things. There are really only 3 things. Everything else should just be zeroed out. You don't really need to mess with it. Occasionally, we've adjusted these for the show, but I'm just going to zero it out. Am I on the right one? No. Yeah, bam, bam. Okay. Okay, so the first 3 buttons at the top, you don't need to worry about. Don't worry about them. They're always going to be up. Occasionally, they might be down. If for some reason it's down, then just go ahead and push it up, but it shouldn't be. The only reason I'm saying that is that the only reason certain mics that we use what's called a plus 48 adds. We need to add amps to the signal in order for it to work. They're the type of microphone that has they're very sensitive, so they pick up ambient sound. They're choral mics, and those they need a different signal in order for them to work properly. If for some reason that is pressed down and you turn on the system with a regular mic, it's immediately going to go whoa, like it's going to feedback right away, and you're going to have a moment where you think you broke something. Chances are that's why that's happening. That's got pushed down. Okay. 90% of the time it's not going to be that way. So you go to your slider, right, and you're going to see that at the very top there is this thing that's called the gain, and it says it to the left. It's on different places on the board, but it's a red knob. This one right here. This is your gain.
You're saying gain?
Gain, G-A-I-N, gain.
Okay.
So most of the time I keep the gain at just the center part, but in reality what it's actually at is about, it's at what it says on here, which is 30. See how I can explain it. The gain controls the amount of electricity that you're allowing to come out of the amplifier. So the basic way a sound system works is you have the source material. The source is the microphone. The source could be a CD player. The source could be a turntable. The source could be an instrument. You have some type of thing that's making sound. That gets plugged into the system, and then from that plug-in it goes into the amplifier. The amplifier then takes that signal and it adds an amount of electricity that is completely determined by this knob. This knob tells the system, how much electricity do you want to go into the signal? How much more do you want to go into the signal? So when the gain is at 0, 0% of the amp is being used. The gain, however, doesn't work in a 1-to-1 system. It's exponential. It's 1 to 10. So when I turn this up to 1, it's at 10. When I turn it to 2, it's at 100. When I turn it to 3, it's at 1,000. When I turn it at 4, it's at 10,000. When I'm at 5, I'm at 50. I'm at 500,000. Like, it goes up very quickly, or 100,000. So when you get to about this point on the gain knob, you're already pretty loud, right? You've already got a lot of energy into the system. So this knob has to be, you have to be very gentle with how you turn it up. If you crank it, it's not gonna go 1 to 1, it's 1 to 10, so it's gonna like just get loud really quickly. So typically we start with it being right in the center, and that's usually a pretty good level. Occasionally you might need to turn it up a little bit, but more or less that's usually pretty good. The sliders below it, these ones right here, are your highs and your lows. So you can tweak your high signal. It's high all the way to low. So it's taking the highest range of what the sound can make. So your falsetto, all the way up there, all the way to the bass sound, which is down here. And you're basically telling the system, I want more bass sound, I want more treble sound. You don't really need to touch this unless you're really like, I want to bring out the deepness of my performance. Yeah, then great, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I just keep it zeroed out. All these down here, you never need to worry about. These are what are called auxiliary knobs, and what the auxiliaries are for additional speakers, additional things that you might plug in. You might have a band and you want a particular speaker to only play for that particular person. We only use these occasionally, so you never have to worry about them. The bottom knob, you do need to kind of be concerned with. It should be straight up and down. That's your pan, and that's your left and right. So if it's not in the center, then you're only getting signal coming out from that side or that side. We try to keep it right in the middle so sound comes out evenly on both sides. Okay, so you've got all those knobs. These two, again, are more auxiliaries. We actually have 6 different auxiliaries. The next knob that you need to, or next thing that you need to really pay attention to, you got your gain right in the center, is what's called the mute button. The mute button, you'll notice that they're all red. Everything's zeroed out. Everything is off. The mute button tells the system, okay, now you can be in use. So you have to unmute it in order for the system to work.
Light. You don't want to light.
You don't want to light. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to turn up your slider, and you're going to go up to about 0. 0 is what we call unity. I don't know why it's called unity. It's just called
Sounds
unity.
nice.
Yeah. So now you've got your input up, and if you go ahead and talk into the system. This is me talking. Okay. So now he's talking to the system, and you can see that he's actually we're getting a signal because this is starting to light up. This is your indication that a signal is coming through. Thank you. But because the speakers are not on, nothing's happening. Right? Mm-hmm. He's saying stuff, it's coming into the system. This is your indication that it's working, right? Okay, I know that everything that I've done so far is working, but for some reason sound's not coming out, right? Mm-hmm. The second half of the system, so this is part 1, right, which is the input side. I've plugged everything into 5, I've got my gain set, I've unmuted it, I've got my slider in the right place. I'm going to bring this down because I'm not really sure how loud that's going to be. The center section of the soundboard is where we control our speakers, our output. So in one part of it's the input, the other part of it's the output. These 3 ones are our main output. So we have our left channel, our middle channel, our right channel, and our middle channel. Okay? So this controls all house left, house right, and then the center. Here's the funky thing about our system. Even though our system is technically a stereo system, it is filtered through a mono amplifier.
Okay.
So here's what I mean by that. It's set up left and right, but because it's filtered through, like you can kind of think of it like you take this left and right system and you filter it through one system. When it gets to here, everything's actually being controlled by the middle channel. Mm-hmm. The reason why they've done that is confusing to me. I don't know. In terms of the people that initially set up this system. It's hardwired. You could redo it, but it would take you a lot of time and a lot of money to undo it. So it works for what we're doing. There's very rarely things when you need to have like, I really want there to be this stereo sound of like sound. I mean, I don't know. It still works. If I plug in something, it's still going to play it out of the left and the right. I just can't control it individually. Okay. Yeah.
So you just use the one on the right? The one on the far
well,
right.
Here's the funky thing is you actually have to have all 3 up. This one controls the signal. This one, these 2 control. So just turn all 3 of them up. So we set that at 0, and then I have to unmute them. So I have to unmute the speakers. That's a common mistake. So my first year here, I made that mistake. First assembly, Miss James is up there, set everything up, everything's working, you know, and I had the microphone working. She's like, hello, 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 nothing's working. I was like, oh my God, panic situation. So I go down, I'm trying to fix everything. Oh, it's not plugged in, nothing's working. I didn't unmute the speakers, so the system was working fine. There was nothing wrong with the system.
Those are the
but
white
it wouldn't
buttons?
work because I didn't unmute the speakers.
The white buttons, right?
Yes, the white button.
Okay.
So you want to unmute the speakers. Okay, so go ahead and talk into the mic.
This is checking to make sure we've got, hey, that sounds much better.
So I turn it up to 0, and 0 is where I want the mic to be when it's working at its average normal level. So let's say he's talking into the mic.
I'm talking into the mic, let's say that. And I'm going to keep talking until you make all your adjustments, and now it's getting louder. And
So I'm turning it up more, right? But that's the gain.
Has a Star Wars kind of quality to it. Luke, I am your father.
And I'm going.
I can play with this all day long.
Right. So thank you. So I can push it up. I can go a little bit. I can add more volume if. So this is where I want the mic to be. Thank you. When it's its loudest. Right? If you want it to be a little louder, you want to have more play with what's going on. I can still bump up the system a little bit. This works 1 to 10. This works 1 to 1. So essentially what it is this is actually what's controlling your volume. This is actually what's increasing the volume of the sound.
Right.
So you're taking this, and this says my range is this. This only allows you to play within the range that you've given it. So right now I've got 1 to 100, okay? The slider lets you move from 1 to 100. If I turned it up more, it goes to 10,000. This now allows me to move from 1 to 10,000. So eventually you can go like that, and it won't, if like somebody has a really quiet voice, it doesn't matter. Like you're not going to get any more volume because all you're really doing is saying, you're just taking what already exists. So if for some reason somebody's really quiet, you have to turn up the gain. Essentially what we try to do with any microphone system is we try to push up the gain till right before it feeds back. Since we're only using one microphone, we're not having issues with that. If you had multiple microphones, they start to interact with each other, and that's when feedback starts to happen. Feedback is actually well, there's 2 reasons why feedback happens. One is electrical signal, and the other is the signal, the thing that you're saying is coming out of the speaker, and it's coming back into the microphone. Right? So it creates this infinite loop of I'm saying something that's being amplified out of the speaker, and that amplification is coming right back into the microphone, and then it's being amplified over and over and over to the point where it can't handle it. It's like,
Gotcha. Yeah.
sweet. So
turn the gain down if that happens.
if feedback occurs, it's because you've got too much energy going through the system. It's too much. There's too much, and you just turn the gain down, and it'll gain control of it. And then you want to kind of, I never even thought about it that way. You want to gain control.
Perfect.
Usually right in the middle works pretty good. Occasionally different people's voices, you need to adjust them. Essentially what you try to do is you try to adjust the gain to the quietest person's, the quietest person's voice. And then you can back off the microphone if you need to. But ideally we want it to be kind of lined up perfectly. So you have a little bit of play and then you can walk away from it. Okay. So that's how you turn on the microphone, that's how you get it. It is helpful to have somebody down there so you can adjust the slider and adjust the gain accordingly. Different mics have different inputs, meaning they can be different, different sensitivity levels. This mic is pretty cheap, and it tends to need to have a little bit more. Some mics you'll plug in and you can only turn the gain up to like that much because it's really sensitive. The other side of the board, this side of the board, 1 through, well, no, you want to use it because it's actually very useful. From 1 through 4 are our wireless mics. They're down there, so you're probably never going to need to use them. 5, 6, 7, and 8, or these, I guess 6. These 2 on the end, one's for our iPod connection, which is right here. And I actually need to move it because I had it set in the wrong spot. This is for if you wanted to play, if you want to play some music before your event. Find my music. So you can just plug in, and it's just a 1/4 inch, or not 1/4 inch, but a 1/8 inch connector. So it's any iPhone,
jack
iPod, any type of computer speaker. You can just plug it in, and then you can play your sound. Again, it's got a mute.
Is it CD player or iPod?
iPod.
Okay.
Sorry, I picked a song that has static. It's Bob Dylan, so he's being a little rustic. So that's for your iPod, and you can just, so you can plug in there and play something, and then it's also got a mute button. It also has a gain that needs to be adjusted, and you can turn the slider up and down. And then we do have a CD player as well. If you wanted to play something from a CD, it's got a pretty straightforward open close. It will play burn CDs. So if you have some event and you want to play a burn CD, it's the same deal. You just put it in here. You've got your CD player.
Oh, it's the last one now.
You unmute it. I don't know, sure what this music is. Let's see what it is.
So what is a CD?
Oh, CD.
You have an 8-track?
Oh, graduation.
We could hook up an 8-track. We have a tape deck too. We have 2 tape decks. So you could.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's a good commercial for
Yeah,
you.
we're getting it. This is from last year. This is from last year's practice.
It's the last thing that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So cool. Yeah, it was the last time we used the CD player. Most of the time nowadays we don't use the CDs.
Yeah.
They're kind of outdated. Occasionally people like to use them, but most of the time it's an iPod. I also have, and I'll show you guys down on the stage, I also have an adapter that you can plug in directly from an XLR plug. It's basically this extension, but instead of it being for a 1/4-inch connection, it's for XLR. So you can plug it, instead of plugging in your microphone, you just plug that directly in. Yep.
Oh.
And then you plug that into your laptop, you plug that into your, so if you wanted to run, like when I'm running an event and I want a microphone, I use 5 for the microphone and 6 for my laptop, whatever. And it's exactly the same. The only difference between this side and this side is connected via cables all the way to the connections on the stage, and these are direct. It's just coming right out of the soundboard. But it's essentially the same. So the right-hand side is for everything up here, left-hand side is for everything down there.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So if you were doing, I think we've had this issue where kids have done slideshows with music they've made on their computer.
Yep.
And so that's what you use that
Yep,
connection
I'll show you that
for?
adapter. You
Okay.
take the XLR cable that I showed you for the microphone,
Okay.
you plug another one in, and then you take the adapter and you plug it to the end of
Okay.
it. So instead of plugging the microphone into it,
Yeah.
you plug one of these guys in.
Okay.
And I have 2 of
the
them.
mic, yeah, okay.
I have 2 of them. One that we use for rehearsal, which has been stepped on and messed with a
yeah.
billion times, and it doesn't make the perfect sound, but it works for rehearsal. And then I have another one that I'm only going to show you guys because I don't want everybody to use it unless it's an actual event. Because